If you want to have great fall seeded crops, one of the most important things you need to consider on your farm is eliminating the green bridge.
You know, as wheat comes off, there's going to be things that pop back up in that field, even if you're not seeding a cover crop. It's volunteer wheat, it's weeds, different things like that. And think about it, I mean, it makes so much sense. As you have problems out in your wheat field, whether it's insects or diseases, if they have another host, they can keep living in your field. So maybe that host is a weed, maybe it's volunteer wheat, that's an obvious host, or maybe it's even the cover crop that you choose. Maybe you're using a cover crop blend and you say, well, I'm going to plant wheat again later this fall, but in the meantime I've got a blend that has some grasses and some broadleaves. Those diseases and insects can find a home, survive. Now when your next crop pops up, they can attach right to it, and if you get a problem in your crop in the fall, you're going to have a huge problem going into next year.
Yeah, and it's not just wheat we're talking about here. It's really any fall seeded crop. If you've had a crop on there this year, or even if you haven't had a crop, let's say it was prevent plant, but there is something growing out there, weeds or cover crop, anything really, going into a fall seeded crop, the idea here is we want to kill everything, have that field not necessarily black with tillage, but at least dead from spray or black from tillage, one or the other, for at least a week, if not 2 weeks. The reason why is mainly because of disease and insects. If the disease and insects don't have a host for a little while, hopefully they're going to die off. So like I say, in a week's time, usually that's enough, but just to be safe, if you can, if you have the time, we'd like to see a 2-week window there where everything in the field is dead.
Well, you know, I don't want to negate the impact that cover crops can make, because there's so much interest around the country, and rightly so, about keeping something growing in your field as much of the time as possible. Believe me, I'm all for that. I love cover crops. If you took wheat off this summer and you're going through the rest of the months of the summer waiting to seed that fall crop, I love having a cover crop out there. I think it's great for the soil, for all the little microorganisms underneath, for nutrient availability, for erosion control, all those things. It's fantastic. But at some point you have to pull the plug and you have to wipe that cover crop out. Now, if you're going to have a spring seeded crop and you've got just annuals out there in your cover crop, hey, no problem. They're going to die off this fall if it's not something you're worried about going to seed. But if you've got a fall seeded crop coming in, you have to be realistic. You really need a couple of weeks here where you get things cleaned out in your field just to avoid any kind of potential pest problem going into your next crop.
Well, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but what it's going to mean is more than likely you're going to have to do possibly an additional treatment of a fungicide, 1 or 2, and maybe an additional insecticide spray, or even 2. So we talk all the time on the show about how we want to take the best of both the organic world and the conventional farming world. Well, this is, where you might have a little bit of debate. Okay, I want the best of the organic world. I want to raise cover crops. And I want to have something growing in there all the time. All right, but if you do that, now in effect, if you don't eliminate the green bridge for a week or 2 prior to planting that fall seeded crop, now you're saying, I can't follow the organic practice because I'm more likely to have disease or insects in there when I don't eliminate the green bridge. So you got to weigh these things out on your farm. All we're trying to say today is if you want less disease, fewer insects in your fall seeded crop, you want to have everything dead in the field for 1 to 2 weeks.
Well, I do like that. I like eliminating the green bridge, and one of the problems that you can have out there is weed control. And if you have our weed of the week, it's one you just can't let go wild in your field. Oh, I gave a little clue there. We'll talk about our weed of the week coming up next.